What's up, guys? If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Also, please smash that like button on the video and enjoy the show. Whatever. What do you think that is, and how did we even get here?
There is a whole new perspective on America, and America is not perfect, but America is still the greatest country ever assembled. Democracy and capitalism are the two best systems ever created. There's a lot of people who've experimented with a lot of things, but we ain't seen one that's better. Right? And the only thing that you need to measure as to whether America is still great or not is there a line out the door of people trying to get in?
Yes.
Because there's a lot of countries where the line is headed out. They don't want to be there. They're leaving. They're voting with their feet and their wallet.
Yes.
America is still the greatest beneficiary of that movement in terms of people wanting to come to our country. And our country really was built by immigrants.
Yes.
And when you look at how the country was built, we used these systems around democracy and capitalism to drive performance. And if you think about in companies, right, there's a huge study done. There's a book called The Outsiders, I think it is. And what they talk about is I think they follow 8 or 9 different CEOs. And they basically say, why are these companies so great? There's a couple of commonalities. The first is they have very decentralized governance. So the CEO doesn't make all the decisions. The CEO says, you're a smart person. You're an A player. You manage this division. Make the decisions. We're going to live or die with the decisions you make. The second thing is they push that decision making as close to the problem as possible. Why should the person working on the problem have to come to you and then you come to me? That's the person who understands the problem better than me. Let them make the decision. The third thing is they're great at capital allocation. Capital allocation ultimately is just a game of incentives. If I put money here, what happens? If I put money here, what happens? And thinking through that. And so there's a couple of these different components that go into what make it great. Well, as a country, we basically are the epitome of this same strategy. We have decentralization. We have 50 states. We have pushed decision-making as close to the actual problems as possible in structure, maybe not in practice, but in structure. We have local governments, we have state governments, and then we go up to the federal government. And then on top of that, what we usually try to do is we try to actually make it better. Capitalistic incentives, right? The whole point is if you come to our country, you have the opportunity to build a life of value, happiness, economic prosperity, and probably one of the most important things, freedom to the degree of if you don't like it here, you can leave. And so when you see all of these components going into it, we're like, wait a minute, we're just a great corporate structure where we have incentivized our quote unquote employees. Those employees produce actual economic productivity for our country. They pay our taxes. They're part of our income. And what we are incentivizing them to do is if you win, we win. And then from a governance standpoint, we don't just say, you're the king. We have a democratic system. Now, in practice, what I think a lot of people have actually gotten very uncomfortable with when it comes to government is that the local politicians seem to be distracted with stupid things. In many of these cities, they're worried about, let's build $1 million toilet rather than, hey, let me actually figure out what are the problems my citizens are facing and how do I solve those problems. The state level, similar. And then the federal government comes in over the top and acts like, get out of my way. I'm the federal government. I'm going to tell you guys what to do. And you see this with public health crisis, southern border, et cetera. And so as a country, what we actually would benefit from is to simply say, listen, all we're going to do is we're going to make your vote actually matter. When you go into the ballot box, when you vote for that local representative, they're going to make the local decisions. Make sure you choose wisely. We're not going to tell you who it should be. You as the local people.
Do you think that realistically will happen?
I think that the only way that it can happen is you actually need a president and an administration that has the intellectual humility to say, I'm not going to overstep.
But does the president and administration really have, this is not the conspiratorial stuff, but do they really have that level of control over things?
Yes.
You think so?
I think that leadership matters. And I think that there are certain people who, frankly, I don't know if I'd be like, oh, this would be the best president, right? I don't think that we know enough about different people who want to be president, et cetera. But I think that if you put the right people in place, they will get things done. And part of getting things done is knowing what not to work on and also when to delegate, and really having local politicians at the local and state level do work and actually focus on important things is a form of delegation. It's to say to them, hey, it's not up to the federal government to make this decision.
Ball's in your court.
Yeah. What do you think your people should do? And then what you end up doing is now you allow the states to compete. And we saw this a little bit during COVID. Right?
Yes.
We saw California and New York lose a lot of people to Texas and Florida. That was straight competition.
They got you back,
Right?
though.
Well,
They got you back.
Here's part of what I think is really interesting, right? Is individuals then start to ask themselves, what do I really care about? Do I care about paying 10% lower taxes? Do I care about some degree of freedom that may not be afforded to me somewhere else? When I left New York, they were doing all kinds of crazy stuff around public health, things that I didn't necessarily agree with.
That was what, like December, January,
I left
2020,
in
2021?
Yeah, December of 2020. So before Miami and all that got really hot, and I thought I was going for the winter. I literally was like, hey, this is going to blow over in 3 or 4 months. I'm just going to go down there, right? My wife and I, we're going to hang. We're going to come back. And then more people started showing up. New York kept getting crazier, right? And it was just like, there's night and day difference here. But then at some point, I said to myself, wait a second. Actually, they're kind of back to even ground. New York isn't doing all kinds of crazy nonsense. Florida's doing what Florida's been doing. So on that standpoint, they're actually equal. There's crime all throughout this country. And when you look at the crime statistics, it is actually very telling. Guess where a lot of the crime happens? Where there's a lot of people.
Yeah. No shit.
Right? California's got crime. Texas got crime.
Yep.
New York's got crime. Florida's got crime. Right? And so like the narrative is actually very different than when you look at the statistics. So you kind of like can't get away from it if you want to live in a big city.
That's right.
And then from a business perspective, I said to myself, am I optimizing for 10% or am I optimizing for 10x? And so I can save 10% of my taxes on living in these low tax states, but is it actually what's best for my business? Or could I just make 10x more for my business by being in a California or New York? And sure, you got to pay more taxes, but your tax revenue that you pay, you're buying something, right? So yes, you have to pay 10% more to live in New York City.
That's an interesting way to look at it. Wow.
But I'm buying the ability to live in New York City. I'm buying the density. I'm buying the energy. I'm buying the ability to walk to the corner store. I'm buying the ability to go to Central Park.
Right.
It's like the most expensive park in the world to attend, right? But damn, is it awesome.
It is awesome.
And so you look at that and you say, okay, what are you optimizing for? And the reason why people argue about it on the internet is because everyone's optimizing for something different. Somebody who lives in Texas can't imagine why you would pay taxes in California because they care about the taxes. But the person in California may say, I can't imagine why you would live where the weather isn't perfect.
Right.
Right? They don't care about the
strokes,
taxes.
different folks.
And so the debate is almost stupid. But what I do think is important is for the American people is to have as much optionality as possible. Let the states compete, right? Allow them to use their incentive systems and taxes to try to get people to show up or to push them out, right? Also, allow them to compete on all of the other regulatory fronts. Because my guess is that if states took more kind of ownership over the regulatory environment and they said, you know what, we're okay having more biotech experimentation here. A lot of people would move there who want to work on biotech stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like, the incentive system works.
Thank you for watching the video, guys. If you haven't already subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.